people always like, well, how do these Lebanese guys go over there? And then they're like at a general store. I mean, people are always kind of surprised by that. But it didn't seem strange.
Well, they had everything in the store. They had washing machines.
No, but I mean, people were surprised there was Lebanese guys who did it. I think that's kind of unusual. But did it seem unusual at the time? Or did it just seem like...
Well, there weren't that many, but we knew. We did. There were so few. It was this family in Wood, South Dakota. That's all we ever knew. And there was one in Sioux Falls or Sioux City. There were no Lebanese people in here. But this family in Wood eventually had a son who became a U.S. Senator.
Did people treat him
So that was Aberris?
Huh?
Aberris.
That was Aberris.
Jim Aberris.
And now he works for the Arab Council or something like that.
How did they end up, how did they move from Iowa then, or wherever, you said that, I thought you said that Sam was in Sioux
went to
City.
buy merchandise in Sioux City, is that
Oh,
what you
so
mean?
he was already in
And he was
Kennebec.
told about Dad.
Oh, okay, so he was already in
Like
Kennebec
that.
at that point. Okay,
That's how he learned that Dad was in this country.
okay.
And were Grandma and Grandpa were like godfather and godmother of Senator Aberris?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Auntie after, Sam after, yeah.
I mean,
Auntie after.
yeah. And Sam.
Do you know anything about
So there's no one
Albert?
use as godparents of use.
My dad never talked
But
about
he's a
his
Democrat.
family. Strange, wasn't it?
My dad told me that when he was a young boy, his parents were advised to save their money and send Albert to the United States. And that's what they did.
Did you ever have contact with him? I mean, like, write letters or
He'd write
letters?
letters.
Oh,
Yeah, Lebanon. My dad would he'd send money to Lebanon. He'd write a check and send it with some Lebanese person who knew it was going over there. I don't know how he'd find out, but he'd never tell my mother about it. But he put it in the checkbook, and my mother checked, would check his statements, well, there it was, but he routinely sent money to Lebanon for his relatives. But I don't recall my dad ever talking about his mother and father.
No, he didn't.
Wow.
Never, ever. And then he eventually, though, brought over his nephew.
Now, another interesting story that some of you may know is that Andrew is married to a girl who is half Lebanese. And her father goes to Lebanon quite regularly. In fact, they're going to Lebanon in September. Well, about 5-6 years ago, his sister visited, and we had her over for dinner. And when I told her that my dad had a half-sister in Lebanon, she was very interested. And she asked where the sister was, and I told her. And so she went back to Lebanon, and weeks later, she called my daughter-in-law's father, and she said, I went to see Marilyn's half-sister. She said, I got in a taxi, and I went, and we went to see the mayor of the town and asked him where this lady would live, and I went and visited her.
I didn't hear.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
And I laughed because I thought, a taxi would be so expensive, and she said it was really a very cheap way to travel there.
So who's your half-sister? Who's your half-sister? I never heard of her.
Amy's
Dad.
Oh, it's still alive.
Yes. And she has a daughter who is raising a young boy.
How old is the half-sister?
Oh, I think old, 80 or so.
Wow.
Second family.
We have a picture of her I will send out when we get home.
Oh, that's neat, yeah.
Never heard that story.
Can you tell the story of how your dad and mother met?
I think
You were-
Joe had it right.
No, I don't
My dad
know.
was traveling, and my
Oh,
mom
I'm
was
sorry.
in this wagon or something, he helped her
That's what
down.
I always heard.
I've missed it.
I just heard that Marilyn told me that the first time he met her, he picked her up off the back of a wagon
I think he
and set
did.
her down. I don't know what happened.
I think she was young.
Wasn't she like 12 or 13 and he was twice
Yeah,
her age?
he was,
Yeah, he was
13
older.
years older.
How old were they when they got married?
My mother was young, and she was very embarrassed about it. I mean, she hated to have people know she was so young when she got married. She was 16.
Oh my
Whoa.
goodness.
And how old was he?
Well, he
He
was
was 13 years
10,
older.
15 years older.
So how much education did she get then? Did she go through high school?
8th grade. And she was embarrassed about
Really?
that too. Yeah, she was very sensitive to that.
How old was she when she had her first child?
I
I would say,
What was that?
I could figure it out, I
Oh, I
think.
don't know. Well, how old
Well,
were
they didn't have a baby, right?
Yeah, probably 17.
Yeah, 17.
Probably 18 or something.
Wow.
I think
Different time.
a funny story is when mother was pregnant with me. I think you can tell the story better, because of course I wasn't. Marlo was very sensitive about his mother being pregnant.
He was 18, a senior in high school.
Yeah, what did tell the story?
Oh, I remember this completely. My mother was pregnant and she went to a doctor in Mitchell, South Dakota, 120 miles away. The hospital, or the doctor's office called and said, Mrs. Abner, you're due in about a week and there's a blizzard coming, so you better come to the hospital and stay so you don't get stuck in pressure. So my mother did. She went a week, she wasn't in labor or anything, just went to Mitchell. And during that time, and I don't know if I'm accurate on this, but her physician took her to a boxing match. And I think it was Joe Louis, but I could be wrong. I could be wrong, but I think it was.
Yeah, it was Joe Louis.
It was, yeah. So she went to this, and then within that week or so, I think she had it on a Saturday night, she had this baby. Of course, nobody was there with her. But the next morning, we were going to go see this new baby. But we were going to go to Sunday school first, and I think my dad was going to open the store first for these people who had to shop before they went to church on Sunday. And so we were going to church, and Marlo said, okay, now don't you say a thing about that baby.
I was so tickled to have this little baby sister, and he said, now don't you tell anybody.
He said, if they'll find out soon enough, they're going to find out soon enough, don't you tell them. So we didn't. So we went to visit her.
I think Helen had that story just a little mixed up. I don't think Mom went to the boxing match.
No, she went to something. She went to something like that. No, she didn't.
But she did.
They went to see the body.
I have a letter, and darn it, I wished I'd brought it. She wrote to me when she was in the hospital.
Oh, she went to something like that.
And she told me that her doctor went to see Joe Louis play.
Oh, maybe that one.
That's what I told her.
It's a better story your way. So stick
For all these years, I thought it was the other one.
But also, the thing that I remember she
Have a
wrote,
baby to the
that
box.
Jim Abner wrote her a letter, and he was telling her all these names to name Marilyn. And naming them after the girls he liked.
Who's Marilyn?
He went with a girl named Marilyn. Anyway, I don't know if Marilyn was a suggestion or not, but
I don't know.
So what did they think when you met John? Started dating John? What did Grandma and Grandma think of all that?
I don't know. I really don't know.
Well, they never say.
But she liked him later if she didn't like him first.
Trying to
grow on Grandpa.
You had to ask for permission to marry her, right?
No.
No.
Think people
She always made me chicken on Sunday.
That's right.
When
was
we
her
made
favorite
Lebanese
son-in-law.
food, John didn't eat.
Well, she.
You were her
Mama
favorite
must
till
have-
I came along.
No, I was still her favorite.
And Mom and Dad, I have to say, are married 60 years this August.
Oh.
Happy anniversary.
Yeah.
That's a great love affair.
I doubt it's probably.
But I think it is. I say it's a great love affair.